Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Open Concept Podcast, where we are breaking down unnecessary walls and barriers that stand in the way of greatness. Our guest today, straight from Toronto, Miss Millie Fox, author of a couple of books, and we talked offline. Can I talk about this kind of next one, book?
Sure.
Book 3? I kind of just talked about it, but book 3 coming up pretty quick. Host of the Millie Fox Show, which tune in. We're going to hear more and more about that coming up pretty quickly. Love it. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to chat with us and our listeners today. Appreciate you being here.
More than happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I have been reaching out to you back and forth and wanted to get you onto this show because I think the message that you bring through your content and you just bring forward is really powerful. You talk a lot about manifestation and bringing into your life things that you create on your own and things that maybe you didn't know was possible. And here on the show, we like to talk about the unnecessary barriers that are in your way of greatness. And I think we were talking a little bit offline, and I was saying, manifestation, it's become a little diluted, I think, in the context of, especially over social media over the last number of years. And I think a lot of people, they really get it wrong when they're thinking about manifestation. I think they understand what the term means, but I don't know that the idea of staring in the mirror and just necessarily having a vision board of what your life can look like and the things that you want on paper is the be all and end all of manifestation. And I was hoping today you could talk to us about some of certainly would love to hear your story and share some of the things that you believe to be true about manifestation, and talk about some of the things that people really get wrong or misconceptions that they have about the idea of this new life or this new energy that they can certainly have that's going to come in and serve their heart.
That's my favorite thing to do. So I'm glad we're on the same wavelength. Yeah, I love to myth bust. I love to dive into the misleading parts of manifestation and where most people kind of get sucked into potholes, let's just call it.
I love that. Before we jump into the idea of manifestation, can we go back in time to Millie when she was a young girl and what her life looked like at that point? Because I think you've had a pretty powerful journey that a lot of people would look at and think, holy smokes, this is really relatable to something that I've gone through. Or maybe they're thinking that something in their life is going on right now and they could really use some help. And I think they would love to hear your story, and I certainly would as well.
Absolutely. So, where to start? Let's see. I usually start when I share my story around the time I was probably about 8 years old, and my parents were splitting up. And, they were fighting a lot. And my mom specifically was suffering from a lot of mental health issues and substance abuse issues. And we had a lot of chaos at home. And when I saw that at that age, I just wanted to help, you know. So I would sit my parents down at the dinner table and try to get them to talk about their problems. And I remember I had this sheet of homework from I think I was grade two, max grade three, that said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I had written on there a psychologist. And I just wanted to figure out what was going on with people that made them act in certain ways to not live their best lives, to not be able to live their best lives, right? And I thought, like, there's gotta be a better way than this. Like, what I'm witnessing at home, I don't want this, right? Like, I need to go to school to figure out how to not live like this. So that's the path I took. And I actually did follow it. I went to school for psychology. I didn't become a psychologist, but when I got into psychology, I loved it, but it felt really far removed from human experience because I had been in the trenches of human experience as a child, and I felt that the psychology textbooks were very dry, and you know, it didn't feel like the nitty gritty. So when I got out of that bachelor's, I went in a different path a little bit. I actually got in touch with my physical health, so I became a personal trainer, which was really interesting for me because I didn't grow up interested in sports, or I hated gym. It was my worst subject, but turned out to be a really good path for me because I started working out while I was in university, and it helped my mental health a lot, right? And
Huge.
I thought, oh, okay, well, this is a really good path. This could be really helpful for a lot of people in taking control of their life, because when you can take control of your body, it gives you so much empowerment. And then I went on to study nutrition because I also my nervous system was completely messed up. My gut was completely messed up. Like all of these different things from the stress that I went through as a kid and all the trauma that I had. And I'm giving the light version of the story, right? But I studied nutrition, and then I was like, okay, this is really interesting. Like, I'm helping people change in this area, but the big area is actually mindset, because people are not changing their lifestyles due to their mindsets, right?
Mm.
And that led me into coaching. And that's where I really fell in love and gained my passion for what I do and helping. I work with women for the most part, but realizing the power that each of us have individually. And I've done my fair share of therapy. I've nothing bad to say about therapy, but therapy really is more so, working through the past and dealing with what was. In my opinion, there are a lot of forward focused therapists who also have training and coaching as well. So I'll put that disclaimer in there. But coaching is about claiming your life, claiming who you're meant to be. It's about the future. It's forward looking. It's, solution focused, which is the attitude that I like to approach life with. So that's how I got into the position that I'm in now, and I've done so many certifications. But the reason that I chose manifestation specifically was because I just believe that there's so much more to our experience than what we're experiencing physically, right? And I grew up, despite, the positions my parents were in, with a lot of spirituality, more so than religion. My dad introduced me to, the power of positive thinking, Norman Vincent Peale, and he introduced me actually also to Abraham Hicks, which they are very big in the manifestation space. He gifted me some CDs when I was in my late teens that I would listen
Wow.
to in the car, so that was my first introduction. But as I got more serious about, the energetic side of creating the life that I wanted, because it's so huge, right? Your energy enters the room before you do, and every person can sense your energy before you say a word, right? And you can do the same with anybody else. It's not a special skill. We all have it. That I realized that there was so much in that space that needed addressing, that needed disclaimers, right? And as a recovering perfectionist, as I call myself, um,
Self-proclaimed recovering perfectionist. Yeah.
self proclaimed, I was trying to be perfect at manifesting, right? I was trying to check all the boxes and do the homework with the 100 affirmations a day and the 20 minutes of visualization in the morning and the evening, and, all of the things that you're supposed to do to manifest. Like the vision board you mentioned, when we were talking prior.
Yeah.
And, I started to feel so frustrated because I'm like, I'm doing everything right. What's going on? Like, why am I not feeling the way I want to feel? Which is ultimately why we all want to manifest, right? It's not even necessarily the things or the external reality. It's how we want to feel. And I have this knack for seeing where things don't work and pointing them out and saying, "Hey, why don't we try this instead?" And that's my special sauce. I call myself a no BS manifestation coach because I cut the fluff and I help you dive straight to the point of manifestation.
I love that. You mentioned so many things here. The conversation about physical change in your body, right? The idea of nutrition and exercise and how that can change your life, your perspective through physical challenges and being able to, whether it's, wake up and go to the gym or not put the food into your mouth that you know you're not supposed to be eating, that can change exponentially the path that you're on and the person that you're becoming. And I speak from experience because one of the things that I'm really passionate about and I take quite seriously is health and fitness. And I know how much the power of going to the gym, lifting heavy things, running for long distances, and watching the food that I'm eating has certainly played in my life. But it's sort of that catch 22 because you go back to the mindset thing. And you know that you can, when you start controlling your body and moving your body, the power that that can have on the mind. But you sort of need that mindset first in order to know or feel that you need to make a change in the first place. That's going to get you to the gym or that's going to get you to eat the better food. And that's not for a day, for a week. And then there's that mindset and that drive that's going to keep you going for a month, 3 months, a year, a lifetime. And that mindset, there's sort of one mindset that needs to get you through the door in the first place. And then there's a totally different mindset shift, I believe, anyways, that you have to develop over time that's going to keep you going through a long period.
Yeah. I think that one of the biggest things in that regard is your why, right? First of all,
Yeah.
why? And who do you want to be? Simple as that. Like, do you want to trust yourself? Do you want to feel confident? Do you want to feel capable? All of these things are part of your why and the identity that you want to have.
That's a really good point. And I mean, your why is always just such a strong anchor to pull you forward into doing the things that you do and why you do them, how you do them, whether you're being a perfectionist or whether, you're kind of sloppy, maybe you're happy with where you are or you don't really have a bigger drive or a bigger problem to solve. But if you do have that strong why and you do have that strong belief in yourself, finding reasons to get out of bed in the morning is a pretty easy thing to do. But until you have that, and I think a lot of people, they are driven. And I've talked to a lot of people on this podcast, and there's always a theme where so many people, they are driven, or maybe they've been really driven at a certain point, but that fire ends up burning out for whatever reason. And they find themselves in the middle of a very different path. And they're in the process of rediscovering why it is that they're doing what they're doing. And that in its own, that window, that slack tide of purpose is where a lot of people end up finding themselves and they start getting confused. And that's where a lot of bad habits start to set in, is because they have been driven at one point in their life to do something, to really hold on to it. then something happens, something major happens, and they're rethinking their life, they're rethinking their strategy, they're re-questioning their whole existence. And then there's that bit of time where it's just there's not a lot of direction. You know something's kind of going on, but there's this pit of uncertainty in their stomach, knowing that something has to happen. They're just not too sure what, and they're just not too sure why. But being able to find that why again, I think is tough for a lot of people. And we started out, I had we're talking about vision boards, and but had painted this picture of what, you go back 5 years, paint this picture of what you want your life to look like in 5 years. But so much stuff happens throughout that time that it's not uncommon for that vision to change and that vision to evolve, and that why and the reason behind doing something changes, right? And in my case, 5 years ago, I didn't have kids. Now, all of a sudden, they were on the vision board, wanted that, but all of a sudden now there's so much more that needs to be taken into consideration when you get to know them, and you get to know, okay, well, what is the next 20 years going to look like? What are the
Yep.
next 10 years going to look like? Who do I now need to become? Not the person that's going to have kids, but who is the person that I need to become to be a loving and attentive father, a role model, a
Yeah.
husband, all these things that, 5 years ago didn't consider. And so need to go back and revisit that and renew that vision, renew that vision board of what that's going to look like. And finding those new reasons really ends up pulling a lot forward.
Absolutely. I agree with that because you also now need to think about who you need to be to help them become who they're meant to be, right? With the kids,
Yeah.
for sure. But I really resonated with what you said of, you have these major events that happen in life, and they put you into a liminal space of I'm not where I used to be, but I'm not where I know I'm gonna be, and I don't really exactly know where I'm gonna be. And sometimes we've had such a clear vision in the past, and then it changes where those things become less important to you because of whatever reason. I've experienced that big time. So the next chapter of my story was divorce, right? It's been 3 years now, but things changed a lot for me going through that, and losing my mom was another huge one because she was a huge part of my story and my identity, and I was really attached, let's say, to that story I had that I have a difficult relationship with my mom. And so, actually, very luckily, and it's not luck, I shouldn't even say that, but I had the best year of my life with my mom, the last year of her life. And
Did
so
you know?
that's
Do you mind me asking? Did you know that? I don't know how your mom passed away, but did you know that it was something leading up to it, or
not
was it pretty sudden?
imminent. It was not imminent, but she wasn't well. It wasn't like she had a terminal diagnosis or anything like that, but I could see that her health was declining. And I mean, it was apparent from the way she lived her life. Like I had a pretty good idea that my mom was not going to live a long life because of the way that she lived. Um, so it wasn't like I knew. It still ended up being unexpected, but the fact was, when we reconnected, because I wasn't speaking with her for, I think it was nearly 2 years. We were no contact, but I started speaking with her again, and I had done a lot of work personally on myself, on the concepts of forgiveness, this, that, the other thing, that I was open to having the best relationship I could have with her within the constraints of what existed. And it was the best year that I had with her before she passed. And so when she passed, I had to change my stories too, right? Like, okay, now I don't have a struggling relationship with my mom anymore. It ended well. It was what we could call the happiest ending that could have been. And then I had to rebuild my entire life after the fact. Unlike a lot of divorce stories, I wasn't the one that stayed in the home. I was the one that actually moved out. And then just rebuilding, identity and what do I want my next relationship to look like, and kids. I've got two kids as well, right? And who do I want to be in their lives? And it's just a whole new dynamic. So basically what I'm getting around to is I had very different pictures in my mind of where I was headed. Not necessarily, but I mean, I thought I was going to stay married for,
I think
those
most
years.
people that get married have the intention of staying married.
Yeah, for sure. I thought I was going to, up until a point where I didn't think I was going to stay married. But you know what I'm talking about is like you have this idea of where you're headed with somebody, and then that somebody is completely out of the picture, and then you're alone, and then you're with somebody else, and the vision that you share with this other person is completely different. So basically, what I'm saying is sometimes you got to go back through this process. And this is the process that I've created, right? Like, I created this process before the divorce. When I sat down, when I was creating one of my first coaching programs, and I said, how did you get here from where you came from, right? Like, so many people I meet when they get to know me well and they hear some of my, more in detail stories of my childhood, they go, I cannot believe you turned out the way you did. You know what I mean? And so I asked myself, how did you do it? And I said, it wasn't some step-by-step process, right? It wasn't clean and clear and linear, but it was a set of questions that I asked myself that I had to answer. Maybe I wasn't even explicitly asking myself, but it was a set of questions that I sought out the answers to through the books I read and through the therapy that I did and all of the things, the spiritual healers that I worked with, right? And so that's the Manifest OS process, which is 5 questions, and I still use it all the time because it's relevant in a day, it's relevant in a year, it's relevant in a lifetime. So the questions start with identity, which is who are you? Right? And then it's what do you want? Then it's what's getting in the way. And it's what do I need to do? And the 5th question is what do I do when I get off track? Because we always need a contingency plan, right? So when you're talking about the why, we always have to start with who we believe ourselves to be and who we want to be and remembering who we really are, right? So if we don't think about that first, then pretty much everything is going to be a little jumbled, I would say, right? We have to first anchor back home, and home is in us and like, the great I am, which is something greater than this physical body, right? So we need a connection to something beyond us. It gives us purpose. It gives us meaning. It takes the pressure off of our shoulders alone. We know we're not in it alone. And then from there, we go, okay, well, now that I know who I really am, what does that version of me from the heart of hearts want? Is it a dangly, shiny carrot over there that I think I want because that's what everybody else on social media is doing? Like the, 2025 version of the Joneses? Or is this really a soul-led desire of mine?
Real quick before we get back to the show, if you have heard anything on this podcast that has resonated with you or if it's helped you in any way, appreciate more than anything in the world if you could go hit that subscribe button or leave us a review. It helps us tremendously. I want to go back to being able to continue to serve and do more and more and help out and get bigger and bigger guests on, better and better. The only way that I can do that is with your help. I'm so honored to be here. Let's get back to the show. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. So I just want to pause you there for a second because I have a couple of questions. If we go back to that, who am I question, right?
Yeah.
How did somebody break that down in the best way? Because I think a lot of people have this perception of who they are, and it may not necessarily be who they are, but it's maybe this vision of themselves that they have that may not actually be real. But it's that, when we talk to AI a lot, like AI will start to understand you based on whatever it is that you feed it. And if you ask it for advice, if you're putting in, hey, this is who I am, this is where I want to go, then AI will provide that feedback for you based on whatever you tell it.
Yep.
but it might be the information that you're feeding it is information that maybe isn't true. It's just this perspective of you in the future, or this version that of yourself that you have in your mind that maybe isn't that real version of you, because you haven't had that opportunity to get really honest with yourself, in the mirror, or if you're doing any writing. So how do you break down that idea of who you really are versus this perception of who you may have in your head about yourself?
Right. Yeah, so I've created this framework that I call the three levels of identity for this reason. So there's three major versions of us. There's our human self, there's our source self, and there's our vortex self. So the human self is as you think, right? It's this version of us in this meat suit in this lifetime that's taken on all of our coping mechanisms and quirks and the personality that we have. And it has all of the human flaws, right? But the human self is sacred. We need to understand that, we were put on earth to complete a mission, right? And this is my viewpoint. Nobody has to share in it, but my belief is that humans are here to expand consciousness. And we do that through forgetting our our true nature. And then we go through the contrast of human experience to remember what we truly want and desire, so that we can get back to that remembering of our true nature, which is pure love and creative capacity. Let's just say it. So the human version comes with these inherent flaws on purpose. Okay, so we have to honor it. So who is your human self? Well, your human self still, you identify with all these hats that you have: mom, husband, brother, sister, business owner, whoever. But then you have to start to look at, well, who am I when I take off all those hats as well? There's actually a really great book called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, which goes over this very
Yeah.
well. If you can't read it, there's a great YouTube summary with all the little illustrations that you can go look up. And then there's the source self. And the source self is that original consciousness that kind of came down into this body, which is your soul, let's call it, right? So that's your greatest creative power. That's you are never disconnected from the greater. Like if the creator, let's call it, was the sun, you are a ray, and you can never not be emanating from the sun. So having ways to connect to this part of yourself is very important as well. And then you have your vortex self, which is like your highest self. A lot of people will call it, that version of you that exists in the land of infinite potential and possibility. And one of the pitfalls that I see so often with the vortex self is that people put that version of themselves on a pedestal, and they create unrealistic expectations for themselves. Like when you hear the messaging in the manifestation world, like be her now, or live as your next self today, or be the person who has the life that you want to have, they think of their next level self, and then they create unrealistic expectations for themselves. But the fact of the matter is, your vortex self, who lives in that realm of full potential and possibility, every single timeline that could ever possibly exist for you, that person's still always going to be a human, because every new level you get to, you are still going to be a human. And what I think a lot of people forget is that that version of you is actually the most compassionate version of you. It's like when you hear people saying, like, you never hear successful people talking, can I swear?
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking shit about those behind them, right? Or you never hear fit people in the gym talking shit about people who are less fit. Those versions of people who have reached that level are always going to be encouraging and saying, yeah, you got to start somewhere and do it and just, and, but they're going to be real with you too, right? They're going to be like, yeah, well, this is what it really takes. And that's your vortex version of you. That version of you is actually your biggest cheerleader, not something to compare yourself to and live in the gap between where you are and where that version of you is and that you think you're supposed to be at already. So, this is how I break down the who are you question for people.
One of the most interesting, I did a workshop for a few days with a gentleman. He's been on the podcast, and he's built and developed personality traits or personality assessments, values indicators,
Okay.
how we deal with stress, how we deal like all sorts of stuff. And he has 85 something. I'm getting my numbers wrong, but a lot of different tests that you can do, and I've gone through a lot of them with our team here at work, right? So who are we? How do we handle praise? What are the things that we value? Are those values being met? And and you find out pretty good, like, how do we deal with conflict? How do you specifically deal with conflict? And everybody is different. But one of the most interesting things during that weekend that we did was, it was okay. We asked ourselves, why are you here? And you sit down with a person who you don't know, or maybe you've known for only a few hours,
Right.
and that they ask you, well, why are you here? And generally, the first question is like, well, I'm here to serve. I'm here to support my family. I'm here to do whatever. And again, ask you, okay, well, why are you here? And
Yeah.
it's like, all right. And you go through this process over and over and over again of all these reasons why you're here on this earth. And it just opened up so many different ideas of that we are not here for a single purpose, or so many of us are not here for a single purpose,
Yeah.
but here for many, many reasons. And as human beings, we are here for so many different reasons. And we're here, all of us have so many different purposes for being here in this world, in this life. It doesn't matter where you are in your life, whether you have a huge amount of money, whether you don't, whether you're incredibly physically fit or you're not, there's still a purpose here for you. Um, Probably more. And I think anybody, like you said, there's so many people that can see that, somebody else that's maybe not in your life, but adjacent to you. Maybe they're a little bit ahead of where you are in business. Maybe they're a little bit ahead of where you are in your physical fitness journey. And if you can't see that in yourself, somebody else out there certainly can see that in you,
Hmm.
and they will often be your biggest cheerleader.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really great point that most of us get locked in to a vision we have for ourselves, like this is our purpose, right? This is who I am. This is why I'm here. And sometimes we lose that, right? It depends, right? It could be a business. Maybe we lose the business, or we are a wife or mother or whatever, and that part of our life changes where the kids grow up and they go off to university, and then suddenly your life is not revolving around the kids day to day anymore, and then it's like, okay, well, I just lost my whole purpose and identity. And it's realizing, oh, I am more than the hats I wear too. And my life has so many purposes that I can't even know, that I will never probably know, because I don't know the effects that I'm having in every single interaction that I have throughout my day to day. So, one of my favorite things to remind people is to be curious, because it's so powerful, right? Like, you hear the word surrender a lot, right? Like, you need to let go and be non-attached and detached. And it really is extremely powerful. And I say one of the non-negotiables for manifestation is detachment. But if we think about the word curiosity, it's it's almost like a cousin, maybe, to surrender or detachment, but a playful cousin, right? Because you're taking that idea of surrender. And I know a lot of strong willed people have a hard time with surrender because they think, well, if I'm not in control, it's not going to go the way I want it to go. And then maybe I'm going to be a failure. And that's not an option, right?
Yeah.
We can't admit to that. So surrender can be very hard for people, but if you frame it as curiosity with whatever it is, your purpose or what's coming down the pipeline for you, or if something doesn't go the way you want it to go, get curious about this because you have no idea the series of events that are about to ensue. Every time that you get somewhere significant in your life, you always look back and you go, wow, I never would have guessed it would have happened this way. And we all know that, right? Like, we all, if you would have told me 5 years ago that I'd be doing XYZ, I never would have believed. I think we all have something like that that exists in our story. So why can't we adopt that perspective in the present and go, hey, I wonder where I'm going. Like, I wonder what twists and turns, which part of the roller coaster am I on right now, and where it's going to go next. Like, wow, what a ride. I wonder what the universe has in store for me and what wonderful places that it's heading. That
I
shift
think
alone.
I think it's a very encouraging place to be and a very encouraging place to live. I talk to a lot of people on this podcast, even they are business owners, they're entrepreneurs, and a lot of them have these stories of, I had no idea that
Yeah.
things were going to turn out this way. Or they didn't know how that was going to happen. It was just this idea of, I need to start. I don't know why I need to start. I'm just going to see where it goes.
Yeah.
But almost all of them have a very similar story of, I if I could picture myself being right here, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it would have been very different because you don't know. And I think that the idea of detaching yourself, as you've put it, is a pretty difficult thing to do
It is not
because you can only really look back when you say, hey, how did I get here? Or you live in that moment of, hey, anything's possible, if you've seen that trend happen in your life. But if you are a person where you feel like nothing has been able to move forward, you haven't had a lot of positive experiences, or you have relationships with your parents, your family, your friends that has been just this really negative trend, then that's likely where you're believing that your future is going to be based on the environment that you have and the experience that you've had up to date. So it's a very easy thing to do, to look back at after you've accomplished something difficult, or you're in a place now where you're happy, or you feel fulfilled, because you can look back and see that path. But it's very difficult to look ahead into the future and hold that belief that great things are going to come and great things are meant for you if
mm,
you haven't seen that trend historically. And so I think, like, that's why a lot of people really want to, they do want to be in control, is because there's this idea that if they aren't, or they give up control to other people, and I see that a lot when I'm talking with business owners, the ability to give up control of whether it's, parts of their business, day-to-day operations,
yeah.
sales, marketing, things that they've owned and said that they are only the best at in the
Right.
world, that nobody else could possibly do it better than they can. They have
Yeah.
a lot of trouble giving that up.
I
But
hear
once
that.
they've had and they have success at that, then only now through that repetition have they been able to gain this belief of, I can do this again in the future.
Exactly.
And that becomes, I've seen it a lot in the gym space as well, right?
For
This
sure.
idea of, all right, I want to be this physically fit person, but historically I have not been this physically fit person because of this reason, that reason. I don't sleep well. I just love cake too much. I couldn't possibly give up my lattes, and whatever that is. I don't have this self restraint or self respect because they haven't had this trend over it. And being able to shift that physically in your body and in your mind is a really tough thing to do if you haven't put in those those reps, or you're a lot further behind than you feel that you want to be. And I feel that so many people, and this is after speaking with so many people, they all have this feeling that they are further behind of where they want to be. And I think that that is a natural thing. Even if you identify and you're speaking with somebody that has arguably a tremendous amount of success in their minds,
Yeah.
they still believe that they should be further ahead than they are.
Hmm. Okay, this is a really great point that you've brought up because I get it. You're when you're in the thick of it, it's like what do I anchor onto if I have nothing to no evidence to go off of, right? And I'm finding it hard to believe what's possible. So let's just break these three non-negotiables for manifestation down. There's desire, there's belief, and there's non-attachment. Okay. So the belief and the non-attachment to, I'm trying to wiggle these two fingers, um,
these
are
ones these ones are hard to wiggle on
on their
on
own.
their own
Yeah,
there.
like
Yeah.
we can do these two. But the point I'm trying to make here is the desire is actually not really the hard part, right? Like we can get that desire as so long as we come in from a place of alignment. And I love that you brought up values before too, because I use a values assessment in my manifestation program because we need to be aligned with our values. And then the personality stuff too, like all sorts of personality tools are really important for the identity piece and helps you with the desire piece. And then you have the belief piece and the non-attachment piece. If you can work on your belief, you will find it easier to let go, right? And one of the best ways to work on your belief is to improve your self-trust. And it's funny that the way that you were phrasing it, because you said, oh, I'm the only one who can do it. I'm the only one. Yeah, that is, I guess, a form of self-trust, but it's the weakest form of self-trust because it requires no no faith, right? Like it's just very constricted form of I'm the only one I can rely on, which is small, right? Ultimately is it's a small version of this. But what I teach is self-trust is one of the most important pieces to cultivate for your belief. And there's two major ways to build self-trust. One is by keeping promises to yourself, and the other is by taking risks. So if you understand why you are doing that, I know that if I'm building self-trust, I'm not only building trust in what's possible for me, you're also building confidence. You're also building trust in the universe, because when you trust yourself more, you automatically end up trusting the universe more. And I mean trust as in I know I can keep promises to myself, and I know that I can take a risk, and if I fail, I have what it takes to bounce back, and if I succeed, I prove something even greater to myself. So either way, the risks are really important, right? But if we don't take the risk and we don't hire the person and we don't offload that task and we don't, lift the heavier weight than we think we're capable of, or, whatever else it is, wear that new outfit to the gym. Like I'm speaking from a lady's perspective, but, we never build like that metaphorical muscle of belief beyond this constricted version of I know if I put X input, I'm going to get Y output. And so I'm just going to only keep putting X input, and then I'm only going to keep getting Y output, Y output, output. But people are scared to put in a new formula, right? But you have to put in a new formula if you want to get a new output. And you do that with the self-trust piece. It's like it's clear as day to me. So for me, when I say I want something, I'm like, okay, well, what promises am I keeping to myself and what risks am I taking? I need to check both of those off.
The universe will only deliver to you what it feels you can handle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, your capacity, your vessel, can your vessel hold the amount of light that you're wanting?
One thing I would add to that, I've talked about the importance on here of the idea of discipline and keeping
Yes.
the promises that you make to yourself in private, building confidence, and then that becomes, you're able to stack that on top of the next thing, on top of the next thing, on top of the next thing. You become more confident in the words that you say, the conversations that you have, the decisions that you make, which inherently allows you or gives you the trust to take the risk that you need to take, and you can start the trajectory that way. One thing that I would add to that, and maybe you can chalk it up as to risk as well, is critical conversations and
Oh, huge.
conversations that
Yeah.
people need to have, because I think a lot of people stray away from critical conversations that they know they need to have
Yeah.
because of fear of what the outcome might be, or the fear that they may hurt that person or they may hurt themselves. But becoming confident in having those critical conversations when they need to happen is massive. I would also add that to your list of items, and that's speaking from my personal experience.
I like to call them courageous conversations. And courage is a huge value for me personally. I am really a diehard fan of Brene Brown and her work on vulnerability. She talks about courageous conversations, and it's the ability to be vulnerable, right? To have those conversations as well, and to understand. What my favorite book of all time is The Gifts of Imperfection. Okay, by Brene Brown. She also has, her other books that are Daring Greatly is an incredible book as well, which is more focused on vulnerability. But you have to learn how to be fully authentic, right? This comes back to the identity piece as well. And if you're showing up in relationships and you're not communicating your truth, you are not living in authenticity, right? And the soul craves authenticity. When we're shrinking for other people, or when we're people pleasing or dancing around things, not setting boundaries, being codependent, this and that, then we're just moving farther and farther away from who we really are, which creates this really big friction inside of us, right? And so, yes, we have to be able to trust ourselves to honor our authenticity. And that comes from those conversations. Absolutely.
Is this world going too far? This is a maybe a different question, but is this world going too hard on boundaries these days? And what I mean by that is, I know that people talk about boundaries, putting up more boundaries for yourself, and but I can't help this feeling that some people go way too hard on boundaries to the point where they don't want to pick anybody up from the airport. They don't want to go and go to this event. But I think you know what I mean. Like, I think there's something honorable in doing stuff that it's going out of your way to do
Yeah.
something for somebody else that's inconvenient, even though it may not serve you in your life the way that you need it to. But I think we are going, or I shouldn't say we all, but a lot of people are really holding firm on the boundaries of, no, this doesn't work within my time, within my schedule, within my specific direction. I'm not willing to give up this to help you out. And I can't help but think that there's a little of that, that's a little of helping out your neighbor, that is being lost in this idea.
We're highly individualistic, right? We're a highly individualistic society, very much me first, me, me, me. And that actually does a massive disservice to us, because, okay, as a perfectionist, right? The antidote to perfectionism is actually self compassion. And if we want to explore self compassion, there's an element of common humanity. We need to understand that we're all connected for that. A. B, for your nervous system to be regulated, to be a well-functioning person that has access to our creative capacities, to connection, to uh, all the things that we actually want to be able to have to create the life that we want. Like, the manifestation sweet zone is when you are regulated, right? It's called your window of tolerance. And community is one of the biggest pieces of that, right? So we're looking at community, compassion, connection. We need to take all of those things into account when we're talking about creating the world we want to create and the lives that we want to create. It's not just, hey, I'm creating and manifesting this little bubble that I live in with, all the people that are in my, circle of 5 or whatever. It's the whole thing. Like, what sort of world do we want to be creating? And that is a very big missing piece, the connection to other people and at the level of depth that we really should all have in our lives for our spiritual and emotional well-being. It's like, would you want someone to do that for you once in a while? Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. And I think a lot of people misunderstand boundaries too, because what happens when a lot of people learn about boundaries, first of all, they go from, having no boundaries at all to then going too far in the opposite direction to having these really rigid boundaries. Whereas when you actually have healthy boundaries, they're flexible. You understand when you can give and how far you can go before you need to bring it back and roll it back in. So like a healthy boundary is not going to just snap if you break it if you push it one time. It's going to have some elasticity, so we need to all understand that.
One of the best, going back to the gym, one of the best theories that I had heard or conversations that I had was, if a single meal is going to break you, then you were never built.
Yeah.
And so the conversation behind that was, I have to be super strict on my diet. I have to be super regimented with my gym, my activities, my workout plan, this, and I'm just, I can't go and eat out. I can't do this. I can't do that. And that kind of brings you to the point, or brings back to the point of, if that is the case, then you were really never built, because you were so fragile that if you were going to go out and have one single meal, or go out and have a drink with a friend, or, I'm not saying you have to drink if anybody's listening to this, but that's another conversation.
Yeah.
But whatever that is, or give up that time in your schedule that you are so rigid about, then you were never really built.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. And I want to give a disclaimer about that too, is that if you're not there, that's okay too. If you have to do the full rigidness first for a little while and do the restriction first for a little while to feel confident, to let yourself have those, pieces here and there, but that should be the goal, right? That should be the goal, is not to be living in the black and white, because that's not reality. We don't live in black and white. We live in a lot of in between and a lot of gray zone. And when we are more regulated, we can handle more of that gray zone as well too.
I've said it a number of times on this podcast that there's decisions that we often make that are very black and white, and there's decisions that you can make in black and white, but there's a lot of magic that happens in the gray.
For sure. For sure. Sometimes those black and white decisions can be life-changing and amazing, right? You're just done with something. Like, I'm just done, right? It's because it's not serving you. And that's great. Some people want to get to that place, right? They want to get to that place of such deep certainty, but they feel like, oh, I'm just not there yet, right? So a phrase that I find very helpful for this is there's two. I'm moving in the direction of, or
Mm.
I'm nurturing the willingness to. And both of those kind of just go like, okay, well, I know I'm on the path. I'm taking the steps. I'm always moving in the direction of it. I'm looking for ways to believe more. I'm looking for ways to detach more. How can I let this go? Could I let this go? Should I let this go? When? How? Like, what if? Who would I be if I let this go? Do I believe this thought? Is it true? Can I know for sure that it's true? Who am I when I believe it? Who am I when I don't believe it? Like just all of these different inquiries uh, of yourself, and knowing that you're not just using that as an excuse or a crutch. Like, oh, I'm trying, right? I'm trying. No, we're not trying. We either are or we aren't, right? Like that's the way that I see it.
Or in the process of. And one of the things that I'm in the process of, and I mean, speaking of rigidity, the last 90 days, I mean, this is a short stint, but have been on a journey in 90 days to cut down to 9% body fat. And that requires rigidity. Like, I mean, the last 8 days of this cut right now, I'm eating nothing but chicken breast and rice. That's it. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it is not great. It's not super enjoyable. I had lots of opportunities to go out for dinner with friends over the last 3 months, and have had to turn a lot of that down. But I know that that's temporary, because I am in pursuit of a goal and know what needs to be done in order to hit that goal, and knowing what I'm willing to give up and what I'm not. But I also
Mm-hmm.
know that it's temporary, and it's a challenge, and it is a, not that I want to inconvenience anybody else in my life, but it is a journey that I am on specifically. And luckily my friends and family have been really supportive. But that's been one of the most challenging things of this, is, which I look back now over the last 3 months, is that drive and need to get to the gym, eating stuff that's different than my family, putting myself through this. I'm inherently putting them through it as well.
Right.
And if I found a point where my wife hasn't slept all night because our youngest, who's 5 months old, she's not sleeping all night. We're talking a little bit about this offline, but there's sleep deprivation that's involved. And all of a sudden, if I'm planning on going to the gym on a Saturday morning, and I'm planning on spending an hour there, well, my family really needs me at home for that support, and they need me to give up that time. And there's that battle there of like, okay, well, I'm in pursuit of this goal. These are the things that need to happen. I'm not going to be taking forward these steps. I'm going to give up that time at the gym because of something else that is more important. And then trying to find that balance of
Yeah.
what is more important. Is it more important that I keep the promise that I made to myself in pursuit of this hard goal and this thing? Or is it more important that my family feels supported, and I don't want this version of myself? If you look at the highest, that vortex self that you're talking about, that person is able to do both. That person is able to do hard things and challenge themselves, but also have the time and compassion and empathy and the tremendous amount of support for their family. And so looking ahead at that person, at what that person would do, and the advice that they would give me would probably be, you know what, go to the gym at a later time, or don't go at all. Your family needs you right now. um, you're not going to break because you missed one workout.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
that's certainly been a challenge, because I think, and it's not that it's not keeping the promises that I'm making to myself. It's keeping other promises that I had made when I had said that I'm committing to this family and committing to having kids. And I committed to always be a great father and be
There you go.
supportive as much as I can. And I'll do everything in my power to make that happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really tough balance when you're trying to push yourself, and when you're trying to do difficult things, to make sure that other people are not destroyed in the wake of you. And that was back to my next question or my last question of, are are a lot of people going too hard on boundaries? So I appreciate you sharing the difference between like really rigid boundaries and healthy ones.
Yeah, and I think like in a situation like yours, you can run through those five questions if you don't exactly know. Okay, who am I? Who do I want to be? What does that version of me want? What's getting in the way of that right now in this specific scenario? What do I need to do? And the what do I do if I get off track maybe doesn't apply in this specific scenario, but it's always there for you. But you can come back to those 5 questions at any point to go, okay, well, like, who, if I'm on my deathbed or I'm 80 years old and I look back, who did I want to be in this moment, right? And what does that version of me really want, right? And that's how I make a lot of my decisions. I'm like, well, okay, what is most important? And at the same time, how am I making sure that I am honoring myself? I'm not self sacrificing to the point where I'm going to look back and say, ooh, I really, you know, I didn't honor myself and my desires. You see, it's a dance, it's a balance of both pieces, but they're both parts of you, right? They're two different parts of your identity that need to have a conversation.
What would you tell to somebody if they said, I don't know who I want to be? And if they're going through this idea of trying to discover who it is they wanted to be, whether or not they were playing too small, whether or not they were stretching themselves to a point where maybe that wasn't possible. Quite often I have the conversation with people and they give me this idea of what they want to do with their life,
Mm-hmm.
and these goals that they want to hit, most commonly in business, right? A lot
Yeah.
of the conversations I'm having are with other business owners, and I'll challenge them in the way that my business coach challenged me, and I will ask them, okay, well, why not bigger?
Right.
And they have this idea that this goal in their mind is all they can achieve, and I see much more in them in their ability to do that, but they don't see it in themselves. And that's because I they can't see that person that they want to become. So if somebody was to say to you, I don't know who I want to be on these questions, I'm stumped on this question, what would you tell them to go and explore, to find that person that they want to be, that they want to become? I think that's probably where a lot of people get held up.
I would tell them to explore their values and their joy. First of all, do a values assessment. There's plenty of free ones online. And get clear on what matters to you. And then explore in the past what has brought you the most joy. And think about that. Think about parts of yourself that you maybe have potentially pruned and said, "Oh, that doesn't make sense for me anymore. Or that's not who I am, or it doesn't fit with this other piece of who I think I'm supposed to be." Look at those pieces of yourself and think about what comes naturally to you, right? Like the things that you think are super easy that other people give you compliments for, and you're kind of like, oh, you brush it off. You're like, I don't, that's nothing. But it's not nothing for other people. I have these moments for sure where I go and I do something like whatever, and someone's like, oh my gosh, how'd you do that? I'm like, what do you mean? It's like that I could do this in my sleep. You don't realize your strengths because they're so natural to you, right? So start exploring your joy, your values, your strengths. And if you don't know, ask some people that you know. You can ask, you're allowed to ask people that are close to you, like, hey, what do you think, are my strengths? If you had to, write out 5 of my top strengths and how you see that in me, you can get those reflections from people close to you, and it may help you. And and then, like, yeah, look at what you want to look back on. Like, what do you not want to regret? That's a huge guiding force for me when I make decisions. Would I regret not doing this? Would I regret? I just do not want to get to the end and look back and feel disappointed that I didn't go for the thing, whatever that thing is. And get quiet. Meditation, whether you think you're supposed to do it a certain way or not. I think a lot of people don't get quiet because they think they're bad at meditating. But meditation simply is just detaching from the thoughts. It's not getting rid of them. It's disidentifying with them. It's sitting there and going like that. I don't have to believe everything I think, and allowing more blue sky to exist, and the clouds are your thoughts passing through, right? And you're like, okay, I see you, clouds, but you are not me. And then tuning into what are the little like pings that my soul is telling me? What direction am I being called to move in? And even if you don't see the fully formed picture, you go, I feel like I need to call this person, or I feel like I need to go on this trip, or I've been feeling really drawn to try karate. I don't know. Whatever it is, you just have to follow those pings coming from inside you. And they're like the little golden lights that create the bridge to where you're meant to go. And you don't need to know the how at all, right? Like you said, so many people, I didn't know how it was going to happen. You don't get to know the how, you don't get to know the when. You need to detach from those things, but you need to just obsess with the why and how you want to feel. And so figure out what makes you feel the way that you want to feel and why you want it, and keep moving towards that.
I love everything that you said there. I back to sort of tying this in with another earlier part of the conversation that we had about the the risks that you take based on the information that you have, the trust that you have in yourself, and the steps that you've taken to make sure that this is a risk adjusted option. And I think the we talk about, or you were mentioning, follow those pings, right? If traditionally you've been the person that's been doing that and it hasn't worked out very well, right? You go on the same dates with all the same types of people, but you have this feeling you like this person, you want
Yeah.
to go out with them. Like there's this little ping that's going on, but you have a track record of following these pings that haven't led you into a very great place.
But is
How do
that
you find
coming?
this? You know where I'm going with this, right? So
Happy.
how do you find the idea of like, is this a ping that I'm actually being called to do, or
Yeah.
is this a past pattern, like a normal feeling that I have? I feel drawn to pack up my life, give up my family, and move to Bali, but maybe that's not the right thing to do in that
Irresponsible?
moment.
Are
But
you
there was a but
are you running away from your problems? Is it a ping or is it your trauma?
exactly. So how do we define the difference?
That's a really good question. It's a really good question. You need to be self-aware. Like you have to have the self-inquiry. You have to be self-aware and start to realize your patterns. Like we are very good as humans at pattern recognition. Are we looking at our own patterns as much as we could be? I don't know. I'm a little bit obsessive about this kind of stuff. So, you know, my chat GPT could probably tell you my patterns pretty well, because I go over it with this kind of stuff. It's a great tool, by the way, for
Bless
self-reflection,
ChatGPT. Yeah.
honestly. But no, how do you know? Like I think that a lot of us have this inner voice that will tell us like, hey, come on, like you're bullshitting yourself right now. Like, hey, are we being honest? And are you making the decision out of fear, or are you making the decision out of love? Like, why am I moving to Bali? Is it because I feel I need something outside of myself to feel the way I want to feel? Is it because I feel like if I do X, then I will feel the way I want to feel? Or if I do Y, then I will finally get the thing that's going to make me feel the way I want to feel about myself, right? Everything that we want to feel has to come first. So the question is not what do I need to do to feel the way what do I need to get to feel the way that I want to feel? Or it's more of a question of what makes me feel that way. I already have this evidence, like joy, for example. I do this exercise with clients where I get them to write down their top 10 goals. And then I do a visualization that takes them back to 3 moments in their life where they experienced the most joy, to revisit and remember, and then take notes about what was involved in those moments, right? Like what was present in that moment that isn't normally present in your day to day life. And then to look for the patterns across those 3 moments and do pattern recognition about what brings them joy. There's evidence. And then we go back to their goals. And I go, are they still ranked in the same order now that you have this information? And most of the time, people change their order after they do that.
One of the most powerful conversations I had was with ChatGPT.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had I brought a question to my business coach, and he asked me, he said, "Do you have a plan to get to $100 million in revenue in your business?" And I said, "No, I don't. That was a big number." And I said, "I have a plan that I've written up as a 5-year plan to get to $30 million in revenue." And he said, "Okay, well, come back to me when you have a plan to get to 100 million in revenue." I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know what to do. I'm like looking at this. I'm like, okay, well, is this like, does this actually make sense? Can this happen? But I went to ChatGPT and I uploaded the documents that I had and the plan that I had put in place to get to 30 million in revenue. I'd also uploaded the 12 personal goals that I had that I wanted to achieve over the course of the next 365 days, the next year. And I said, help build a plan, and more words than less, help build a plan to get to $100 million in revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And it spat me out, sure enough, a framework that could work to get to $100 million in revenue. And then I asked it, I said, who is the person that I need to become to, without a doubt, ensure that I'm going to hit these goals?
Mm-hmm.
And it's had out a full framework for that. And it said, you're going to be getting up at, you're going to be up at 5, you're going to do an hour workout. And then after that, you're going to go to jujitsu at lunch, and you're going to sit down and you're going to make this many calls and you're going to do this. And I was like, okay, well, this is great, but it was a little scary. It was like all I could see was all these things that I was going to have to give up in order to achieve this goal, and this very regimented schedule.
Right.
And I had to take it with a bit of a grain of salt, but I went back, I sat on that for a couple of weeks, and I went back and I asked it, pulled up the same chat, the history, because I've been sitting on it now for 2, 3 weeks. And I said, who is the person I get to become on this journey of getting to $100 million in revenue? And the
Mm-hmm.
answers that it spat out were wildly different. And it talked about the mindset that I now have, the person that I now am, the father that I now am to my children, the body that I have, the physical challenges that I have, the light that I've been able to share with others, the knowledge along the way that I get to have, the charities that I get to impact. And that was a very different way to look at what's going to be going on for the next 40 years. And, as I go throughout this journey, and that was far more inspiring than just this is all the shitty stuff that you're going to have to do that's really going to suck along the way. So there's still an understanding that there's a framework, necessary steps that have to happen on a daily basis by way of volume. But there's also this other sense of understanding, okay, this is why I'm doing it. This is
Yeah.
why I'm making the sacrifices, because during this process, this is the person that I get to become.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a much better way to frame it than I have a complicated relationship with the word sacrifice. Like there's something about it I really don't like, because I don't want to view anything I'm really doing as a sacrifice. I want to look at it as a choice to choose this over that. And I don't
Priority
feel like,
management.
yeah, and at that point, is it a sacrifice or is it something I wanted to release? Like that's the it's been difficult for me because some people really enjoy that word and feel a lot of pride around sacrifice. And even the word discipline, like I think some people have a complicated relationship with discipline too, where I've framed discipline in my mind every time I hear the word discipline, I put the word devotional before it. So, in that sense, I feel like every time I am disciplined, I'm actually devoted to something. Maybe I need to find one of those pre-frames for sacrifice. I don't know.
Well, I think it's priorities, right? Anytime that you're not getting a massive, didn't make something done, or why you chose this over this, why you went to the gym instead of staying here, or why you took that late meeting instead of, this, or why you decided to, go home and have dinner with your family, or spend 4 hours with your daughter at the swimming pool versus going to meet this client on the weekend when they wanted your time, when that could move the business forward as well. But it's this idea of, well, I decided to make that a priority, or I decided not to make that a priority. And then it takes, I just think that it provides more ownership on the
Yep.
decisions that you're making, and
Uh,
ownership on the decisions that you're choosing not to make.
agree with you for sure.
That's that's maybe the preemptive frame to sacrifice is uh priority shifting. But I'll leave that to you. We'll talk about it next time and see if you've come up with
I
anything
agree
good.
with you. When we come to the question of, and I mean, we're not going to keep going on it, but when we come to the question of what do I need to do, I have a framework called priorities and impact. So there you have it. So,
I love it. Millie, if thank you so much for being here with us. Where can people find you if they want to know more about the manifestation operating system that we've been talking about here today? Maybe they're struggling a little bit. They need a little of your love. Where can they find you?
come find me on Instagram at Millie Fox, Millifox, and DM me the word MEAT. MEAT stands for Manifest Everything Actionably and Tangibly. And you'll get a workbook and you'll get a meditation, an activation that takes you through the Manifesto S questions, the 5 questions. And it's a really good place to start for sure.
We'll make sure we put that into the links in the show notes.
Awesome.
Really, thank you so much for spending some time here today and making this conversation with me a priority
For
for your
sure.
afternoon. Really
Yeah,
appreciate that.
it was a pleasure.
And to our listeners, for everybody else out there that's still with us, thank you for making this conversation a priority in your life. Uh, until next time, as always, peace, stay blessed, rock and roll. Millie, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.